Good evening. It's 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night in London. My name is Gary. This is Gary's Glorious Golden Nuggets, the Golden Nugget Nation broadcast. Very grateful to have your attendance and your attention. Thank you so much for being here. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make a comment. That really kind of helps the algorithms. We'd like to make it grow and have more people involved in it. I'm actually kind of going through a whole thought process. I'm thinking of leaving actually YouTube or keeping YouTube. I'm not really sure which way to go with it, but posting on things like Odyssey, Rumble, BitChute, etc. I'm also looking at moving my, I guess, websites or my web presence to something called Locals. I'm just becoming very aware of having been shut down one time on things like YouTube, receiving a strike for a truthful comment. They just said a fact checker disagreed with me, but when I sent them the evidence, they didn't really care. They just wanted to keep the strike period in play. Fact checkers obviously are only giving their opinion. Very rarely do they actually have facts to back them up, in my opinion. But that's just me. So I'm just going to hang in here. Now, I have 3 questions tonight. So on this Q&A, this is really great because I rarely have more than one question. So I have a question from Janine, who lives in Canada. Janine said, I once heard you referred to as Dr. Jenkins. Is that true? And if you're a doctor of what? Interesting. Yes, I do hold a doctorate. I hold a doctorate in divinity, which is basically a study of the divine in the universe. As you may know, I have a background in psychology. I spent years with a master's of counseling psychology and worked in psychology for 37 years. Worked a lot with addictions, marriage and family issues. I am a trained marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified sex therapist through Patrick Carnes' organization. Anyways, at the end of the shock genres, I never went after a doctorate in psychology because I became aware that psychology was not really a science, it was only a philosophy. That was number one, which automatically put me at odds with the people I was in my working field with. And the second thing was, when I first started out in psychology, it was all about take your issues and belief systems, etc., and set them aside and make yourself almost like an empty space so that you could talk to people where they are, meet them there, and apply the principles of the philosophy of psychology into helping them to move forward, which was like listening, applying some very valid psychological principles, etc. But as time went on, it became you have to follow certain agendas. You can't hold different opinions, or you can't refuse to work with people, or you can't make them feel comfortable or uncomfortable because they can tell that you believe differently or you're not in line with them. And so during this time period, I went after to get my doctorate. I always wanted to get the doctorate. And I just went down the track of being a psychologist and found that, it just really wasn't what I wanted to do. And then I came across theology. Now, in my earlier years, some of you know that I was a minister in Germany, and I do hold the title of Reverend. So I am the Dr. Reverend Gary Jenkins. I've never had my credentials removed from me. I served for 18 months as a reverend in Germany when the church and I came to an agreement that really may not have been the right call for me. But I still am able legally to perform marriages and funerals and all kinds of other things. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. You learn things. And what I love about the fact when I studied divinity was the fact I could use it in my counseling psychology, because oftentimes, especially when I was working in addictions, we're always talking to people about there's something greater than you, because in their addiction, they're usually stuck on just them. And we say, you can't get yourself out of this mess that you're in. So you need something bigger than you. You need something that's outside of you, that's greater than you, that won't fail you, that you can believe in. Now, for some people, that's just a coffee cup. Because if they're having that coffee cup and it's full of coffee, they're not drinking alcohol. I mean, that's about as simple as I can make it. Then there are other people who get into the idea that, there's a spiritual aspect, there's a God, there's divine, there's angels, whatever that's involved. That's fine. Whatever helps you to become better, to not, as Einstein say, do the same thing and expect a different result, but to actually do something different and receive the different result. That was what I was all in favor of as a psychologist. So, yeah, I do hold the doctoral title. I'm Dr. Jenkins. I don't really get into it. I think the only time I ever use it is when I'm making reservations for a restaurant that people want to eat at. And it's oftentimes when I walk in there, they say, "Oh, Dr. Jenkins, yes, come over to this table. Dr. Jenkins, what do you specialize in?" And when I tell them that I have a doctorate in divinity, they go, "Oh," because they were expecting me to say, "I'm an oncologist or I'm a neurosurgeon." As my son once said when he was about 4 years old to next door neighbor, says, "My dad is a doctor, but he's not the kind of doctor that does anybody any good." So that's just the way life goes. Okay, now from Michael. He said on last week's episode, he says, "You say energy cannot be destroyed, only changed. Can you explain that better?" Well, Einstein had a simple formula. He said E, which equals energy, equals mass and light squared. So, light traveling twice as fast as what light can do. And if you understand mathematics, you can begin to take formulas and move them around. So you can take like energy and divide it with light, put mass on the other side, etc. You can say mass is light divided by energy, kind of a thing. And it still means the same thing. So I think the thing that most sticks out in my mind and what made this very clear to me is there are in the Milky Way, this galaxy that this planet supposedly belongs to. I don't even know how many light years away it is, but there is a place called Sagittarius, and it's a constellation, etc. But there is a massive, the biggest black hole we've ever found, sitting right there, and it's called Sagittarius Star 1A, I believe is the title to it. Sagittarius Star 1A. Now, it consumes in mass about 600 Earths a second. But what's really unique about this consumption of this mass is it gives out extreme amounts of energy out into the universe. It gives light and it gives energy. Now, light is energy, and there are many different levels of light, all energetic, all measurable. But this black hole, based upon its absolute mass, is perhaps the brightest thing we have in our galaxy because of the amount of light and energy that it gives out. So all that mass is going in there, and it's being crushed down to such a minute level with the gravitation of this rotating galaxy, and it's consuming stars. One of the things they realize out there in the Sagittarius area is that there's stars that have different kinds of orbits, but they're all orbiting around this black hole, and eventually they're just going to be sucked in. So my understanding, if I remember right, is that this black hole, if it was sitting in our solar system, would be from the sun to Jupiter. That's how big it is. It's massive. It's absolutely massive. And people don't understand how it became what it is if the Big Bang happened like 13 million years ago. It's just too big. But they found over 100 such massive super black hole type objects just in our galaxy. So they're very important. They exist. But anything you do is energy. Just think about money. If you didn't have money, you would have no way to reserve the value that's in money. You would go with whatever it is that you're doing. Maybe you're making shoes, and you would go into a marketplace and you would sell shoes for perhaps grain, clothes, whatever that is that you need. But you have to consume it then, at that moment. Whereas money allows you to earn money, put it aside in savings, let it sit there, let it retain some value. And when you want it to go on a holiday, or you want to buy a coat, or you want to buy a car, you can take what you have reserved and bring that forward. It's just like it's a form of maintaining energy. It's a form of, because you put the energy to create it, and now you're expending it, and it has only changed because it was matter. Whatever you did at some form was either matter, it was intellectual energy, it was knowledge, whatever it is that you provided has been exchanged into this reserve that allows you to retain the love, the energy that's there together. And now when you're ready to expend it, you're usually expending it for matter, things that are physically created in this world, things that you can attend, you can go to a school. So we live actually in this 3D world, but in this 3D world, matter, energy, and light interact. And energy can only be changed into something else. It can become light. It can become matter again. So energy is always there. So when people say, oh, I'm too tired, I don't have the energy to do that. Is it true? Because you have all the energy you had when you woke up this morning, and you have all the energy when you go to bed at night. Now, you might be physically tired, but you have the energy to do a lot of things. So yes, Michael, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be changed into something else. So go ahead, and I hope that helps. Now, I also had a third question that came in. Hooray for Sue, who lives in South Africa. South Africa said, you talk about vibration increasing. What is that? Energy vibrates. Everything that we know on this planet vibrates. This microphone in front of me is vibrating. The computer screen you're looking at is vibrating right now. And it's vibrating at a frequency that you think is solid. But it really isn't solid. Nothing's solid. If you could slow the vibration down, you'd find it's mostly empty space. If you if you could speed the vibration up, you probably wouldn't even see the object, because now it's vibrating faster than you can see. And so you can't see anything. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm still getting over the COVID thing. So when you're talking about vibration, the thing to keep in mind is vibration is something that you do when you do things like meditation, when you do things like positive affirmations, when you do things like get into a pity party about how your life isn't going right, you are affecting your vibration. When you vibrate at a lower level, you tend to attract people who are vibrating at a lower level as well. If you grow up in a poverty zone, for example, and everybody is listening to music that talks about how worthless you are, how you can't win, how everything is against you, when all you see are people who are homeless, when there's drive-by shootings, when there's no respect for life or property, when you go to the grocery store and you see that it's not the best nutritious foods, people aren't happy to see you. You're almost glad to get out of the place with whatever you purchased. And now you want to hurry home because you don't feel safe in between. You're really low, you're really vibrating at a very low level. Contrast that with when you talk to people who are vibrating at a higher level, higher than you, they find themselves kind of uncomfortable talking to you because you don't get the picture. They tell you things in a way that you argue with, you disbelieve, you don't want to believe, you're not interested. Now, I have not been shy about telling people being raised on a ranch, being a cowboy, having a mentor in my life, really, by the name of Jim Short. He was the foreman of the ranch. He kind of taught me how I should view and engage in life. He was not a guy who gave kindly to things like baloney, telling people half truths. It was always the truth. It was harsh reality with Jim. And he vibrated at a level that was higher than everybody else I knew on the ranch. Because most people, life isn't getting any better. It's not good. Everything's out to get you. Every day is going to be horrible. If something bad is going to happen, it will happen at the worst moment in the day. It's self-destructing. The horse will throw its shoe when you're the furthest point away from the ranch. I mean, all kinds of things. These guys would always talk about it. It was their whole thinking. Jim was always talking about, we're going to win. You're going to find that the tasks that are assigned to you, you're going to be able to do with great efficiency, and it'll be easy. You'll be able to come home with far more work done than you ever anticipated when you went out in the field. That was his expression. Now, it's different, but he was vibrating at a higher level than the rest of the people on the ranch. And the closer I got to Jim, the more I realized I became like him. I started talking like him. I started thinking like Jim. I began to see that at each day, there were opportunities for me to succeed. I began to see that when I was a kid, I literally rode for hours every day looking for breaks in the wire of a fence. And every time I found them, I had to use whatever tools I had, but I had to bring the two pieces of wire together, stretching them. Sometimes I needed my horse to help me because it was really quite a muscle job, but I'd have to use some tools to mend the wire in the fence and make it strong enough so it wouldn't break. And I would keep going down the miles and miles of fence. And I had to repeat this loop all the time. It was like a never ending job. But in the first days, in the very beginning, I might only do 700 meters of fence. That's about it. Finding the break to fix the fence sometimes took me half a day. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't believe I could do it. I knew it was dependent on me to do it, but it just took a long time. And when I got towards the end of this task, it took me like 2 years before they let me go do something else on the ranch. But every day going out there, I got to the point where I could do a few miles of fence in a day, no problem. I could fix every break. I knew exactly how to do it. I could see when I was there already how to fix the fence, how to make it right. It was because I started vibrating at a higher level. My belief in myself, my belief to do things changed. Now, when I came to London, one of the things that I wanted to do was because I wasn't vibrating at a high level. I had been working with drug addicts, thieves, people who were lawbreakers, uh, broken marriages, people who were cheating. I mean, this is not high quality stuff. Now, they may have been very successful people in life and they had a lot of money in it, but they had a lot of deficits, and they rubbed in on me. So one of the things I used to do is I'd go to like Hyde Park to the Oriental Hotel, go in there and buy a cup of coffee and sit for the 90 minutes they let me sit there for that 7.5-pound cup of coffee and just listen to people. I used to go into Dorchester Hotel, do the same thing. I used to go into Savoy Hotel, do the same thing. Just sit there and kind of begin to feel the vibrations of the people who were there, the successful people, people who were really optimistic about life, people who I could overhear their conversations. Do you know, as a child, when I would tell people like I would like to be a fireman, I got told, "Oh, you can never be a fireman. You're not very big." Or people would say, "Oh, you can't be a policeman. You can't spell. Policemen have to write reports all day long. You have to spell correctly." I used to be told stuff like that. So whenever I say I wanted to do something, I was constantly told I can't. I remember my sister telling me one day, oh, she was in university, and she said, "Gary, I'm gonna become a teacher." And I said, "How much do teachers make?" She said, "About 8,000 a year." And I said, "Is that how you're going to be financially successful?" And she looked at me and she said, "What does it have to do?" And I said, "Well, you have to buy a house, you have to have a car, you want to have kids, you want to have all these things. They all cost money. Can you do that on 8,000 a year?" And she says, "Well, you see, you start off at 8,000 a year, and then you start immediately working on a master's program. Now, the school helps you with getting that master's, with the cost. And when you have obtained it, you get a bit of a pay package increase. And then you start working on a doctorate. And now, when you get a doctorate in your field, it really helps you with your pay packet. And if you do it all right within like the first 10 years, you can almost double your income. I said, so from 8,000 to 16,000 going to school the whole time. And then what happens after that? Well, once you have a doctorate, you start making money faster. So by the time you get to 20 years of teaching, you're making about 30,000 a year. Okay. And what happens after that? Well, then you either go back to school and become an administrator, and then you become a principal, or you become, some kind of superintendent or something of schools, and you can make more. Okay, I understand that. Why would you not get your administrator right off the bat? Oh, I guess you could. Yeah, that's possible. But the thing is, I was the first person talking to my sister about real facts. Most people just told her teaching is a good career. It's a real divine calling, and you'll be good helping children. That's all she ever heard. Nothing about how do you face the realities of life. What I needed in my life as a child was not people telling me, you can't read, you can't write, you're not very big, you're not very anything. Every time I said I wanted to do something, it was just a litany of what was wrong with me, that I couldn't do that. And when I got to the ranch and I'm with Jim, I'd say, Jim, I'd like to do this. Well, that sounds really good, Gary. What's your plan? How can I help you? In life, we need to find those people who are the Jim Shorts. You need to find people who will help you. I was touched this week. I read this story about Mrs. Thompson. She was a school teacher, young boy who came to her class. He dressed funny. He looked funny. He was ostracized by the other students. She had to go back and read everything about his history. And she started realizing, when he started out in school, he was a real bright kid, doing very well, and then found that, the next year, he started off the year very well, but then it became aware that his mother was not doing too well in life. And this was having a bad impact on him and in his ability to learn because he's so focused on something else. And then this young next year they came back in and said, his mother's passed away. He's really wounded by this. His father's very disinterested in whatever's going on in his life. And he's just pretty much just sitting in the classroom and being a cipher. Next year, he's just a cipher, don't know what to say. He hasn't participated, doesn't talk, doesn't engage, doesn't do homework, doesn't study, doesn't do anything. And this teacher decided that she was going to make him her project. And Christmas time came around, and the little boy, she had all these lovely presents from everybody, but the little boy came with just like a paper bag. And in the paper bag was a rhinestone bracelet with many of the rhinestones missing, and a perfume with the bottle half empty. Teacher made a big deal out of it. This is wonderful. Do you see how beautiful? She put the bracelet on. She took the perfume. She put some on herself. She said how lovely it smelled. At the end of the day, the little boy came up to her and said, I'm glad you liked my present. You smell like my mother. She was so touched. She decided that she was going to help this little boy, to bring him back, to help him become the child that started out in the first grade. And she did. And by the time the end of the year came, he was the top student in the class. And he told her, you're my favorite teacher. And he went through school, and he went to high school, and he told her, you're my favorite teacher I ever had. He went to university, and he told her, I've decided to go on to further education, but you're the best teacher I ever had. And finally he says, look, I'm going to get married. I'd like to have you come and sit in the place of my mother. My father died last year, so it'd be really wonderful if you could just kind of represent the family, sit in the place where my mother would sit. He said, by the way, I've completed my graduate school. I hold the title of doctor. I'm a medical doctor. I'm an oncologist. The teacher showed up at the wedding, sat there, amazed. And he thanked her, says, you're the best teacher I ever had. And she said, I'm so grateful. Because of you, I learned to be a teacher. Go find those kind of people. They will raise your vibration. And as you raise your vibration, you will be raising theirs. That is how energy is changed. It's never destroyed. Don't hang out with the losers of life. Soar with the eagles. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful week. I'll catch you next week.